Good evening. Daisaku Ikeda reminds us that music is the flower of a culture, a language common to the entire world. Mankind shares the desire for peace and happiness, and religious philosophy is the only means by which this desire can be answered. Music often determines the direction in which the youth of a nation will travel. My name is Isaiah Kadri Jemian Gafour, and I have been transforming the lives of individuals through creative expression for as long as I can remember. As a 23-year-old African-American male who grew up just around the corner from this very building, I am a living example of victory over violence. American oppression has plagued my family and this great nation for far too long. It is because of this oppression that I sought to be the Buddha, creating value in everything that I do, aiming to be the absolute best and enduring even the most strenuous circumstances, enabling me to never give up. Despite my financial riches, my life is the greatest example of self-worth in an unbalanced society. It is my life's mission to carry on a legacy of peace building demonstrated by Mohandas Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King, and my mentor, Dr. Daisaku Ikeda, through human transformation, education, and cultural expansion, holding meetings with the world's top leaders. Buddhism teaches the dignity of all human life and that all people have the right to become happy. In 1930, the Soka Kyoku Gakkai, Value Creating Education Society, was founded by Tsunasaburo Makaguchi and Josei Toda to promote Nichiren Buddhism as a means to reform not only education, but society as a whole. Nichiren Buddhism reflects the life of Nichiren Daishonin, a 13th century Japanese monk who sought to spread the correct teaching of the law through chanting and recitation of the Lotus Sutra. As a result of the 20th century Japanese government oppression, Makaguchi and Toda were imprisoned as thought criminals for their theory of placing the happiness of children above all, instilling an undying will to study. Sadly, to this effect, first Soka Gakkai president Makaguchi passed away in prison the following year. Released in 1944, Josei Toda reestablished the Soka Gakkai as a value creation society with a determination to enrich the lives of ordinary human beings through the practice of Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. Barely escaping the Japanese militaristic rule, in 1947, Daisaku Ikeda, the fifth of 8 children, met Josei Toda at age 19 and joined the Soka Gakkai as President Toda's disciple, engaged in the cultural educational expansion of world peace. Together, Daisaku Ikeda and second Soka Gakkai President Toda fought relentlessly to raise the happiness of their country through the spread of Nichiren Buddhism. Furthermore, these two individuals strengthened their own faith through their efforts for world peace, known as Kosen Rufu. These efforts led Josei Toda to develop the methodology of human transformation, known as the human revolution. Toda explains, this human revolution is the process of fundamentally transforming one's way of living and developing a clear awareness of one's purpose or mission in life, therefore declaring the desire to build an unshakable view of life based on an understanding of the eternity of life, rather than a short, slighted pursuit of earthly desires, aiming for a way of life that maximizes value creation. On the 8th of September 1957, President Toda issued a declaration calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons at a meeting of some 50,000 Soka Gakkai youth at Mitsuzawa Stadium of Yokohama, Japan. After a life of unbreakable faith amidst the treacherous times of war, Josei Toda delivered a speech with the same vigor as Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. It was at this time that Josei Toda placed the responsibility for carrying on the struggle against inhumane weapons and the threat to the dignity of all life on the youth. Struggling against these weapons, and on March 16, 1958, just a few weeks before President Toda's passing, he delivered an everlasting speech to 6,000 Soka Gakkai youth at Tasekeji, Japan, entrusting us with the responsibility for the future of the Soka Gakkai and our efforts to contribute to the creation of a peaceful world and promote understanding of the humanistic philosophy of Nichiren Buddhism. This desire for maximum value creation fueled Daisaku Ikeda to achieve world peace by spreading Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism to the entire world, and on January 26, 1975, on the American island of Guam, he established the Soka Gakkai International and has now spread to some 190 countries and territories with 12 million members, creating endless waves of happiness around the world, embarking on our very own inner transformations, making tremendous triumphs, changing the destiny of mankind. President Ikeda states, a great inner revolution in just a single individual will help achieve a change in destiny of a nation, and further, will enable a change in the destiny of all humankind. In 1983, Daisaku Ikeda began writing peace proposals, publishing them annually on the anniversary of the founding of the Soka Gakkai International. These proposals embrace the interrelation between Buddhist principles and the many challenges facing global society in the effort to bring action to upholding the dignity of life. On the 50th anniversary of Josei Toda's declaration calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons, President Ikeda published his 2009 peace proposal entitled Building Global Solidarity Toward Nuclear Abolition, in which he profoundly calls for us to abandon the habit of studiously ignoring the menace posed to Earth by nuclear weapons and instead demonstrate that a world without nuclear weapons can indeed be realized in our lifetime. 6 years later, he steadfastly holds his determination to abolish nuclear weapons in his most recent peace proposal entitled A Shared Pledge for a more humane future, to eliminate misery from the earth. Daisaku Ikeda, a man that I consider to be my mentor in life and faith, envisions the establishment of a treaty outlawing nuclear weapons in which each country commits itself to a self-imposed veto. Together, these acts of self-restraint will form an overlapping fabric that brings into a being of a new era, one in which people of all countries can enjoy the certainty that they will never suffer the horrors wrought by the use of nuclear weapons. Launched in 2011 by the Soka Gakkai International USA Student Division, we launched Our New Clear Future, a campaign centered around second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda's declaration for the abolition of nuclear weapons, and President Daisaku Ikeda's efforts toward this cause. A world free of nuclear weapons by 2030 is the mission of the youth of the Soka Gakkai International and the Soka Gakkai of the world. This will only be accomplished through fearlessness, self-determination, and everlasting faith in ourselves, our law, and each other. Through our each individualistic approaches and individual efforts for peace, our undying respect for the dignity of all life will transcend to a nuclear abolition signature in which we have a pledge that will be submitted to the United Nations headquarters in New York that states, "We, the youth of America, pledge our commitment to expand the network of young people in support of a treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons as a step toward ridding such weapons by the year 2030. The risk from nuclear weapons is not that someone is going to press the button, but the existence of these weapons costs a lot of time, effort, and money just to keep them secure. As hundreds of millions of people across the globe go without food, shelter, and water, nuclear-armed nations spend close to $300 a day on their nuclear forces. The words of Ms. Toshika Tanaka, a survivor of the 1945 nuclear bombing on Hiroshima, her words continue to resonate within my heart. She shares, "Peace is like the seed of a plant. We need to nurture it with water because there are forces out there, emotional ones like hatred, and economic forces that can lead to a worse situation. War can happen much more easily than we imagine. It is the passion of the youth that spreads the flames of courage throughout society. This courage, transmitted from one person to the next, can melt the daunting walls of difficulty and open the horizons on a new era in human history. Today, it is not only our mission as youth of the Soka Gakkai International, but as global citizens of the world to bring peace in our lives and all lives on earth. This starts with the abolition of nuclear weapons and transcends into all aspects of misery on earth. As we all continue our faith walks for world peace, Daisaku Ikeda reminds us, nothing is irredeemable in youth. Rather, the worst mistake you can make when young is to give up and not challenge yourselves for fear of failure. The past is the past, and the future is the future. Keep moving forward with a steady eye on the future, telling yourselves, I'll start from today. The Gandhi King Ikeda Peace Builders Award was created with the hope that by examining the lives of great individuals, we will find these lofty ideals and principles within the grasp of our own daily existence. The same is true in Buddhism. We must remember to study the lives of others and enrich our own lives through our endless efforts to attain happiness while upholding and respecting the dignity of life through the destruction of fear of nuclear war and bring an end to world hunger, economic injustice, and misery on earth. Take action with the youth division of the Soka Gakkai International as we collect signatures affirming the dignity of life. As Dr. King once said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rabbi Bradley Levenberg, and if you believe that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. And despite the fact that there are black Jews, Rabbi Levenberg is not here this evening, so I will be standing in his stead. Let us bow our heads in a moment of prayer. O great one, who flings the stars against the sky, who breathes the wind into the world, whose twinkle of the eye illuminates the universe for all to see. You are indeed the source of life and peace. Praise be your name and spirit forever. We know it is you who turns our minds to thoughts of peace, who helps us to reconcile with one another despite our petty differences. Hear our prayer in this time of crisis. Change the hearts of men and of women, whether they be Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, or whatever their modus operandi for faith is. Help enemies to speak to one another. Those who were once estranged, let them now join hands in eternal friendship. Help us as nations far and nigh to seek the way of peace together. Strengthen our resolve to give witness to each of our truths by the way we live. Give to us an understanding that puts an end to strife, mercy that quenches hatred, forgiveness that overcomes vengeance, love that cures all. Amen.
Good evening. My name is Devin Jerome Crawford, and I currently serve as the president of the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel Assistance Program. And it is my honor today to lead our congregation in a litany to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Gandhi King Ikeda Institute for Global Ethics and Reconciliation. Would all who are willing and able please rise as we engage in this moment of call and response. And the litany will be found on page 18 of your programs. Today we gather to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Gandhi King Ikeda Institute for Global Ethics and Reconciliation, a program that focuses on meditation, conflict transformation, and peace. As we work together locally and globally to create a legacy of nonviolent teachings, it will be an audacious challenge, a challenge calling for justice, peace, and compassion for the children of the world.
We must be the change we wish to see.
We celebrate the immortal spirits of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., and the living wisdom of Daisaku Ikeda that emanate from the times and places of their lives into the future and out into the entire world.
We must see the change we wish to see.
We honor the founding of the GKI Institute to heal and revive human hearts and minds deeply wounded by violent ideologies and open the way for a new chapter in human history.
We must be the change we wish to see.
We celebrate the anniversary of the GKI Institute because the Mahatma demonstrated a paternal love in his recognition of the need for training and discipline that has also served as a cornerstone of the work of Drs. King and Ikeda. They exhibited an awareness that it is only by developing the discipline of self-control that people could truly understand the science and spirituality of nonviolence and use it to overcome their weakness and realize their own strength.
We must be the change we wish to see.
We advance the personalities and principles of Gandhi, King, and Ikeda for their exalted way of peace, inspired by a deep sense of compassion, and because of their commitment to creative social reform, leading people to develop global networks of peace and spiritual solidarity.
We must be the change we wish to see.
We forge a mission to link the revolutions of Mohandas Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and Daisaku Ikeda so that these three may come together at this hour to overthrow the old world and found a new world house of moral citizenship, tolerance, respect for difference, and diversity maturity, grounded in spiritual oneness.
We must be the change we wish to see.
Today we commemorate the life and legacy of the character of the Barefoot Saint of India, who believed in the immense spiritual and religious potential that resides equally in each of us. His legacy inspired Drs. King and Ikeda to become prophets of inner spiritual transformation for individuals and communities that have sparked reformations in politics, education, and cultures, as well as reconciliation between nations, races, and religions.
We cannot have what we are not willing to be. We do not get what we desire. We get what we are.
Therefore, because the Mahatma's spiritual legacy is one of humanity's priceless treasures, we strengthen our numerical forces at this critical juncture in history to accelerate the Gandhi King Ikeda Institute for Global Ethics and Reconciliation in the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel at Morehouse College and the global movement for peace and nonviolence. Today we teach activism, nonviolence, optimism, and populism in the spirit of Gandhi, King, and Ikeda, promoting a holistic vision for the growth, health, safety, and well-being of our evolving, beloved world community.
Our vision is the creation of a global society in which the full development of each individual's potential is the central goal.
And so be it. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mustafa Shahin. I'm with the Atlantic Institute. I would like to begin with thanking our colleagues at the Martin Luther Jr. International Chapel, who are representing the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr.'s nonviolent peace-building philosophy. Dean Carter and his team are the true representatives of this legacy at this very institution. They proudly carry the mission of Dr. King, making it available to a wider audience beyond the campus, all the way to the communities around the world. They are eager to reach out to people from different backgrounds who share Dr. King's ideas in building sustainable peace through nonviolent, people-to-people methods at the grassroots level. This is precisely what we do at the Atlantic Institute. Therefore, we are all the more excited to see Mr. Fethullah Gulen, our prime source of inspiration in our peace-building activities, honored with the 2015 Gandhi King Ikeda Award for Peace. We are grateful to our colleagues here for not only partnering with us in the Peace Conference, but also for seeing the virtue in presenting the sources of nonviolent peace building inherent in our tradition. This is a tradition, a message of understanding represented by Mr. Gülen, a Muslim scholar who originally emerged in a distant country in a different setting. But when you closely look at his message, you see a core that very much resembles to the ideals of Dr. King and many others who stood up for peace and justice even during tough times. I believe what Mr. Gülen preaches is not so different or unheard of for this very audience at all. It is Gülen's message to us, and when I say us, I mean all of us, is to stand firm in our peace-building efforts. This is certainly inspired by the Quranic principle where God calls people to home of peace, Dar es-Salam. It's a call for peace, first at the personal level, that starts from the self, then spreads to the communities around by recognizing the fact that, again, as Quran states, reconciliation or peace is best. وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. And during tough times, when people hijack the beautiful message of God for their extremist, destructive purposes, what Gülen says sounds very much like what people during the civil rights movement said. When we see obstacles lay ahead, we say, no, 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 ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to peaceful land. Forgive me my singing, or actually not singing it. We are all grateful to God, who allowed us with many blessings like an understanding and welcoming society, or like the colleagues and friends here at this chapel, who were open to starting a conversation with Muslims and let the true message of the faith we share with the silent majority of the entire Muslim world to have a voice way louder than the extremist vocal minority. When we see the destructive actions of the extremists that kill not only people, but also our high spirits, when it is so difficult to stand firm in our ideals, it is great to get together with friends from faith communities like this one to ease up our pains and sufferings and remind us ourselves Madiba Nelson Mandela's song, "Go Forward," Shasoloza, as he says, just go forward. I believe that's what we all are trying to do today, going forward up to the freedom land. Thank you, and God bless.
The Glee Club has another engagement. They're very popular, and they're now rushing off to that engagement. While they are departing, one little tweak in the program you will now discover. Dr. Alp Y. Aslandagan, I call you forth. Dr. Aslandagan, and I trust I'm pronouncing that correctly, better known as Alp, is standing in this evening for Mr. Fethullah Gulen, who lives in Pennsylvania and is in ill health, but very worthy of the tribute that we are about to pay him. Fethullah Gulen, we honor you today because you were the first world teacher in the tradition of Islam to publicly condemn in the Washington Post newspaper the 9/11/01 terror attack upon the World Trade Towers in New York City and to call for global peace. We honor you because you have consistently spoken against suicide bombings as not reflecting the profound spirituality of jihad. We honor you for affirming the intrinsic dignity and equal moral worth of all persons. We honor you for your gift-giving impulse that is not hijacked by a separatist tribal logic or where the separatist feature hangs on factors that are morally neutral and irrelevant, such as race, ethnicity, gender, nationality, and sexual orientation. We honor you for your beliefs and actions that the universe clearly sustains cooperative diversity. We honor you for your teaching that the highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes our life in harmony with all existence. And because yours is an ever-expanding humanity and continued socialization and formation as a human being rooted in your deep ecumenical Islamic faith, as an ongoing process that has not stopped at your legal adulthood, I am pleased, therefore, to forever link your name to those of Gandhi, King, and Ikeda. You have my sincerest congratulations. He deserves this applause, and it rightfully should belong most of you are unaware that I have searched for years for a universally accepted Muslim. To join Gandhi, an Indian Hindu, King, an African-American Christian, and Ikeda, a Japanese Buddhist. And that's not a mistake, Buddha. It was Gandhi who said that the roots of nonviolence can be found in all of those religious traditions. And so, we present you this medallion with the profiles of Gandhi, King, and Ikeda, and under their profiles is the word peace in Hindi, in English, and in Japanese. The name of the award is at the top, and on the back are the signatures of all three men in bronze and the conferring institution. And we traditionally say to our honorees, we want you to wear this on the high holy days just to let your friends know that you've got friends in Atlanta. And the award comes with a citation which reads, "The Gandhi King Ikeda Award for Peace, Mr. Fethullah Gulen, Turkish Muslim, scholar, thinker, author, poet, opinion leader, and educational activist. In the tradition of Mohandas K. Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Dr. Daisaku Ikeda, you have served your community and the world through your dedication to peace and unity, your commitment to nonviolence, and your persistent efforts to establish justice for all humankind. Therefore, we present to you with heartfelt appreciation this celebratory tribute on this 9th day of April 2015, John Sylvanus Wilson Jr., President, Morehouse College, Lawrence Edward Carter Sr., Dean, Martin Luther King Jr., Chapel, International Chapel, Morehouse College." You want to turn? I'll take this from you in just a minute. Now, this is an award that does not carry a purse. It carries a library. And there's a specific reason for that. I won't give a long speech, but let me just explain. All three of the men for whom this award is named were and is. Ikeda lives, Gandhi and King are deceased. Scholar activist. Reflection action. The collected works of Mahatma Gandhi fill over 100 volumes, each averaging over 500 pages. When the collected works of Martin King are completed at Stanford, it will be 14 volumes, each over 500 pages. But remember, he was gone at 39. One night, Claiborne Carson called me from Stanford and said, "There's something I think you need to know." when the 14 volumes of King's collected works are completed, they will only represent 2% of his work. What do you do in your spare time? Daisaku Ikeda internationalized the Soka Gakkai. They are in 192 countries and territories, 12 million members. He only speaks Japanese. He achieved this with the power of the pen. He has authored over 200 books. We hope you read. There's a whole galaxy, a universe out there to be discovered. I could say more, you're so captive, but I'll stop there. And so this is for Fedelagu. I'm going to let you speak.
Dean Carter, esteemed honorees and esteemed guests. As some of you know, Mr. Gülen has been suffering from multiple medical conditions for years, and he has not left his retreat center for the past several years, except to seek medical attention at a nearby hospital. I was fortunate to be with him a couple of days ago, and in appreciation for this kindness, for this recognition of the work of the social movement he inspired, he sent this brief message. Dear Dr. Carter, I am humbled by the kindness of the leadership of the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel at Morehouse College to consider me as the recipient of the prestigious 2015 Gandhi King Ikeda Peace Award. I can only accept this award on behalf of the participants of the Hizmet movement who devoted themselves to serving fellow humans without expecting anything in return. Educators who served thousands of miles away from their homes, near Arctic Circle, in sub-freezing temperatures. Those who continued to keep their schools open in northern Iraq, despite the threat of ISIS occupation. Those in Nigeria and Afghanistan who provide educational opportunities to girls. Doctors, nurses, humanitarian relief workers who served in Somalia and Sudan under dire circumstances. And entrepreneurs who compete in donating to charitable causes, despite facing economic hardship themselves. These devotees of love, who come from different nations, religions, and ethnic backgrounds, are the ones whose work is recognized with this award. They are the ones who seek happiness in the happiness of others. What unites them and the pioneers of human rights in Asia, in Africa, in the United States, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and all around the world, is their commitment to humanity, to hold every human as dignified, and to be committed to the dignity of every human is a sign of respect for their Creator. I have always prayed to God that He would include me among these blessed individuals, but never considered myself as the leader of any of them. You were kind enough to recognize their efforts and sacrifices, and I simply accept this award on their behalf. My health doesn't allow me to join you in this meaningful occasion, but for spirits united around high human values, physical proximity is never needed for a conversation. Humbled to be included among those whose work is recognized through this award, I thank the organizing committee for their consideration. Sincerely, Fethullah Gülen.
Thank you very much, Al. In your program, you will find a bio of our speaker, Dr. Scott C. Alexander. And so I will just lift up a few highlights. Associate Professor of Islamic Studies, Director of the Catholic Muslim Studies Program at Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. His interest in Islam dates back to the early 1980s after witnessing the events of the Muslim Revolution in Iran and concentrating in comparative religion as an undergraduate at Harvard. Graduated magna cum laude from Harvard, earned a Master's of Arts, PhD in the history of religions with a concentration in Islamic studies from Columbia University. And that's the Columbia robe that he has on. He's taught at Indiana University in Bloomingdale, at Columbia University, Fordham, and Princeton universities. He's author of Islamic History, Religion, and Christian-Muslim Relations. He's currently Vice President for Development at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra Association. Married, father of one son, and they live in Hyde Park, the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago. It is my sincere privilege to welcome him here to speak, and I'm delighted to welcome the many of you who've come from around the world, from the world community of Islam. After the next selection on the violin by Azan Xavier Henderson Lott, class of 16, Dr. Alexander will come.
Greetings and good evening to everyone. The song that I will be performing this evening is entitled For Every Mountain. The lyrics are as thus: I've got so much to thank God for, so many wonderful blessings and so many open doors. For every trial that He's seen me through, for every blessing it says hallelujah. For this, I give God praise. Each and every one of us in this time of Thanksgiving have something to think on that we are grateful for life and for health and for strength, for being here in this moment. And so as I play, I ask that you would close your eyes, if you will, and think on these things. Thank you.
You've all heard the expression, no doubt, a hard act to follow. The program says that my title this evening is a call to nonviolent peace building. That developed a little bit into something a bit more specific. It's civil rights, the Hizmet movement, and the liberative power of education. To all my Jewish sisters and brothers that may be here present, Shalom Aleichem, Vechag Sameach, a blessed Pesach to you. To my Muslim sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu. To my Protestant, Roman Catholic, and evangelical Christian sisters and brothers, He is risen. Happy Easter. To my Orthodox and Eastern Rite sisters and brothers, a very blessed, great Holy Thursday. And to one and all, may peace and the mercy and blessings of God be with you. There's a well-known hadith or report of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that he once so wisely said, Man la yashkurun nas, la yashkur Allah, which means he or she who does not thank his or her fellow human beings cannot possibly thank God. So I wish to begin this evening by following in my own feeble manner the sunnah, the example of God's messenger. I would like to express my gratitude to the two major hosts of our conference. I'd like to thank Dr. Mustafa Gökhan Shaheen and all my dear friends at the Atlantic Institute. Were it not for their friendship, love, trust, and entirely unfounded confidence in my ability to speak adequately about the contribution of Fethullah Gülen to the welfare of the human family, I would not be here with you this evening. I would also like to thank President Dr. John Sylvanus Wilson Jr., Professor Reverend Dr. Lawrence Edward Carter Sr., Dr. Alexander Daniel Hamilton VI, the Dean and Assistant Dean, respectively, of this beautiful Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel, and the entire family of Morehouse College for the inestimable honor of being inducted this morning into the Collegium of Scholars. With absolutely no exaggeration, it is one of, if not the greatest honor of my life. And with as much certainty as any human being can muster with respect to his or her future, I dare say it will be so until the day I breathe my last, inshallah, God willing. When Dr. Carter was giving my fellow inductees and me a tour of the chapel this morning, and speaking to us of the yeast for the leaven that is the loaf of civil society in the United States, that is this place, that comes from this place, I knew I should at least metaphorically remove my two shoes, as did the prophet Moses, Musa alayhi salam, on Sinai, because I am indeed standing on sacred ground. It was all the more sacred because of the faces I saw on the walls of the gallery of portraits on either side of this beautiful nave. I fully realize that this gallery does in no way pretend to be an exhaustive representation of the communion of so many saints who share the special liberation, peace-building, and non-violent and reconciling charism of Blessed Martin. But given the latest agony in the all too long and all too painful jihad or struggle for a true recognition of human dignity in these United States, I couldn't help but imagine the image of the mujahida, the striver, Judy Scott. She is the mother of Walter Scott, who was just one of the latest and most well-known victims of the heinous sin and scourge of structural racism. In her most recent and perhaps only media interview to date, Mrs. Scott said of the officer who murdered her son, quote, "I have forgiveness in my heart," end quote. This, my friends, is the essence of the nonviolent striver or mujahida. The forgiveness of which this grieving mother speaks is no easy forgiveness. It is not a naive forgiveness that ignores or underplays the grip that evil can and does have on the human heart and on our world. It is rather the forgiveness which is nothing but perfectly consistent with the fight against this evil. For the refusal to forgive is the elixir of evil, insofar as it is the poison of our souls and thus our human communities. Many of you have probably heard the phrase, the refusal to forgive is like taking cyanide and waiting for your enemy to die. Where does this wisdom of Judy Scott come from? As a Christian, I think I know the answer. From the Holy Spirit. But as we know, the Holy Spirit works in and through us, especially through the growth and transformation we necessarily experience as we journey through our short time here on earth. The Honorable and Righteous Mrs. Scott, this weeping mother who is living the nightmare of every mother and who nonetheless expresses the deepest faith possible, she learned to be the woman she is. She has been catechized both as a disciple of Jesus Christ and as a daughter of the civil rights movement. As is most certainly the case with Mrs. Scott, a lion's share of the growth and transformation we all experience on our life's journeys come through one of the primary media and primary engines of personal and social transformation: education. Now, one of the great ironies of the human story in general and of the history of the United States in particular is that the structures of oppression in our world have always been aware of the power of education. This is why these structures instantiated, and fought and fight so long and hard to preserve segregation. First, in the places in which we make our homes, but as a close second, in the places in which we educate ourselves, and especially our youth. If, after all, lies are to be told, they must be upheld, defended, and perpetuated precisely in those places where education, the discernment, production, and transmission of knowledge, takes place. Those who are oppressed and on the margins must ideally be kept such and there by ideally keeping them from education. As you all know, one of the fulcra of preserving and perpetuating the utter brutality of chattel slavery in the U.S. were laws prohibiting teaching slaves to read. The structures of white power and privilege were well aware of the liberative power of education. And one of the fulcra of the Jim Crow attempt to maintain the socioeconomic dividend of slavery for the post-emancipation U.S. was, in fact, school segregation. But despite all its efforts, the structures of systemic oppression could not prevent the oppressed from imbibing the very awareness which was at the root of their oppression, that knowledge, as the path to truth, as the Gospel of John reminds us, sets people free in a myriad of very pragmatic and concrete, as well as deeply subtle and mysterious ways. As we know, this awareness was in many ways at the heart of the wisdom and courage of the ministry of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement in general. This awareness of the liberative power of knowledge, though, is something Dr. King derived from the revelation of his tradition. And this is a message that exists in other revealed traditions as well. It is clear in Islam, it is clear in the Quran. In Surah Taha, Ayah 114, God gives instructions to the Prophet himself as to what he should pray on approaching God's very words in the series of Qur'ans, of recitations that the Prophet Muhammad was receiving. God tells the Prophet, قُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Say, O my sustainer, increase my knowledge. There is another prophetic hadith. It's Hasan Mashhur For those of you who are interested in these things, people debate whether it's sahih or da'if. Those people who know these terms know what I'm referring to, and if you don't know the terms, you don't want to be bogged down in these details. But it says in Arabic, "Utlubu ilma walau fi sin." The Prophet was remembered to have said, "Seek knowledge even if it's in China." And they didn't mean that part of the world that is now the People's Republic of China, seen in the Arabian Peninsula of the 7th century, was the ends of the earth, basically. Seek knowledge to the ends of the earth. And Imam Reza of the Shiite tradition said, "Utlubul ilm min al-mahd ila al-lat." Search and seek out knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And perhaps most strikingly was the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that teaching people how to read and the manumission of slaves are two of the primary ways in which one could make reparation for serious sin. And this very memorable teaching of the Prophet both implicitly and explicitly links liberation and education. Fethullah Gulen is being honored this evening not only because he's a great human soul, like the great human souls of Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. King and Dr. Ikeda, but because what has led him to be that human soul, that true human being, is his striving to follow the example of his beloved Prophet. And so I want to just speak now, in the time I have remaining, of education as a liberative force in the Hizmet movement and the teachings of Fethullah Gulen. Before I do so, as an academic, I just want to say a word about objectivity. This is something that in the postmodern world is a contested issue. Can we ever be objective about anything? I would say probably not. But should we give up on objectivity as an aspirational value? I would say probably not. We need to strive for it at all times. But some people interpret objectivity in the sense of utter affective and spiritual detachment. You can only be objective about something you could ultimately care less about. If you care about someone or something, you can't be objective. If that's the kind of objectivity that is true objectivity, I don't even want to strive for that. Not 1 second of my life. I want to strive for the kind of objectivity that I try to strive from when I'm doing self-examination, or when I'm trying to sort of help my son deal with a problem he might be facing. I like to think that I can see the flaws in myself and in the people I love without stopping to love them, without stopping loving them, I should say. So, my confession is, I love Fethullah Gulen, and I love the Hizmet movement. But I also think that my love for Fethullah Gulen and the Hizmet movement does not rob me of my capacity to make some observations, some analytical observations that have some credibility and validity. And so that's what I propose to do. I want to start by just briefly defining the Hizmet movement for those of you that might be not very familiar with it, and then move on to sort of highlight maybe 5 salient features of the Hizmet movement that I hope will bring home for you the sense in which this movement and the teachings of Fethullah Gulen really embody this notion of education as a liberative force in the lives of individual human beings, in our communities, and therefore as a transformative force for the good in the world. So first, I define Hizmet as by the way, the word Hizmet is Turkish for service. It comes from the Arabic khidma, which means service, and that's what the word means. I define Hizmet as a movement of personal, familial, and social transformation, rooted in traditional Islamic spirituality, observance, and teachings, but appealing to people of diverse faiths and backgrounds who share its universal values. These values center around the importance of family, education, and personal responsibility for the welfare of others. Such values are oriented towards dialogue and cooperation, both within and across societies and cultures, for the purpose of pursuing greater justice and the greater solidarity of the human family. So that's how I would define Hizmet. A movement of personal, familial, and social transformation. A global spiritual renewal and social reform movement. Rooted in Islamic values, but not exclusively Muslim. A first major feature would perhaps be the inspiration it receives from the teachings, of course, of Fethullah Gülen, and particularly his teaching on tolerance, and I'll say something about that word in just a second. As many of you know, the human spiritual inspiration behind Hizmet is this evening's Gandhi King Ikeda Award Peace honoree, an elderly Turkish gentleman who mows the lawn and washes the dishes by the name of M. Fethullah Gülen. Known affectionately to the millions who deeply admire and love him as a true man of God, an eminently wise teacher, and I number myself among those, as Hoj Efendi, which means beloved teacher. There are many things I could say about this man. Indeed, I could spend hours talking about his incredible life story of selfless service to God in the humble service he has always striven to render to others. I could spend hours exploring with you the insightful and profound ideas he shares in his scores of books, translated into scores of languages. But I'll do neither for three important reasons. The first is I would violate my trust to stay within the more than generous 30 minutes allotted for my remarks. The second is, I know we're all committed to nonviolence, but nonetheless, I'd like to get out of here in one piece. And the third is that Hoj Effendi would be upset, really, actually, if he thought I was spending my precious time talking about him, rather than the mission to which he has dedicated his life and to which he has tirelessly invited countless others. So I thought I would encapsulate the teachings of Fethullah Gülen and what I have come to identify as one of the guiding principles or central themes of Hizmet by talking to you very briefly about tolerance, except I don't want to talk to you about tolerance. I want to talk to you about the Turkish word that is most often translated as tolerance in the writings and teachings of Fethullah Gülen. But before I tell you what that word is, let me just read a very famous quote from the poetry of Fethullah Gülen. In English, I would butcher it in Turkish, although it would be far more beautiful in Turkish. Be so tolerant that your bosom becomes wide as the ocean. Be inspired with faith and love of human beings. Let there be no troubled souls to whom you do not offer a hand, and about whom you remain unconcerned. End quote. Now, be so tolerant. You know, tolerance doesn't have the best valence, the best resonance in contemporary U.S. American English, at least. For many of us, it has the sense of putting up with someone or something that irritates you. You know, containing your anger and irritation, being able to bear with difference and diversity even though it really bugs you. That's not what the word in Turkish means by a long shot. The word in Turkish is hoşgörü. Hoşgörü. And it comes from two Turkish words, hoş, meaning good, and görmek, meaning to see. The word hoşgörü is seeing the other in a good light, or seeing the goodness in the other being one's fellow human beings, or any constituent element of God's creation. Fethullah Gülen, in his own way, demands that all the people of Hizmet, and invites all the people of the world to practice hoşgörü. And he says there's a really good reason for this, and that is because God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who brought us all into being, who is perfection, who has no flaws, who is all just and all good, looks at his creation and particularly at us as flawed and sinful human beings through the lens of hoş görüyor. God looks at the goodness in us and seeks through God's guidance to augment that goodness. And we, therefore, must do the same in our relationship with God's magnificent creation around us, and especially in our relationship with our fellow human beings. Another element is the commitment to education, which I've been alluding to all along. There are over 1,500 schools inspired by the educational philosophy and pedagogical methods that are imparted in the wisdom of Fethullah Gülen. And actually, a very important part of the philosophy of Fethullah Gülen, the educational philosophy of Fethullah Gülen, is education by example. In fact, he actually distinguishes between teaching or instruction and education. Teaching happens in the classroom, but teaching is only one dimension of education. Education is the formation, intellectual, spiritual, emotional, of the entire human being, and that we do most effectively with others when we strive to embody the very ideals that we think God wants enhanced and grown and nurtured in all of us. I can't help but make a connection between this approach to education and this sacred place, this chapel and Morehouse College. I was walking on the campus this morning, and I was called Sir more times than I can count. And I thought, I felt so dignified. And I felt the dignity of all these young men who called me Sir. They called me Sir out of their profound sense of dignity. Because they're getting educated here. They're not just getting taught. Their spirit, their dignity is being grounded and augmented. And this is really so resonant with the pedagogical philosophy of Fethullah Gülen. Another element of the Hizmet movement that is relative or connected to this idea of education as a liberative force is what I call the mutually critical assessment of tradition and modernity. Fethullah Gülen talks about how we have to use modern ideas to critique and better understand traditional values and practices, and at the same time use traditional teachings and values and practices to better assess and critically evaluate modernity and its various aspects. The point being a deepening of personal faith and this ongoing jihad or struggle for social justice. Connected with this, another point, the relationship between what's in Turkish called akıl ve kalb, the intellect and the heart, or intelligence and compassion. Fethullah Gülen teaches a lot about the importance of democracy and stresses how important for both any democratic or plural society the integration in its citizens of the heart and the mind are. Good solutions to problems can only be the fruit of hard critical analyses. But every rational solution to a problem must be judged according to how it affects the lives of people, especially the most vulnerable among us, the ones the Quran refers to as the mustadafun, the ones the New Testament refers to as those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. I want to end by just telling you one personal story that reflects my own deep personal encounter with Hizmet's commitment to the liberative power of education. And I think you'll instantly see its connection to the values of the civil rights movement and the foundational values of this sacred place we are in this evening. I had occasion a couple of years ago to visit South Africa. I was going during Ramadan to give some talks at interfaith iftar dinners in Cape Town and Johannesburg and Durban. And when I was in Johannesburg, I had occasion to visit Soweto. And many of you know Soweto as a township that stands as a symbol of apartheid oppression and the backbreaking poverty of that oppression. I went to Soweto escorted by teachers from a Hizmet school, because many of the students, in fact, the vast majority of the students in one of their schools, this was a boys' school, come from Soweto, and they go regularly to the township to visit the parents, because a vital component of the educational philosophy of Hizmet is the teacher relating to the parents and bringing the parents in to the educational, right, not just the teaching, but the educational development of their sons and daughters. When I got back to the school later that day, I had the wonderful privilege of speaking to some of these amazing young men, all black South Africans. And after I spoke to them, I was blessed by the stories they told me and the wisdom that was in their young hearts. I asked the principal a little bit about them, demographics, other than the fact that most of them are from Soweto. And I asked about their religious affiliation, and he said, "Brother Scott, they're 80% Roman Catholics like you." I had to fight back tears from coming to my eyes. I probably shouldn't have fought back, because Turkish men are used to crying and looking at other men crying. To think that these members of the Hizmet movement traveled thousands of miles away from their home to a culture very different than their own, with very little financial resources, their pockets and hearts filled mostly with ikhlas, which is the Quranic word for sincerity, to give my young black Catholic brothers and sisters in the girls' school a chance at a better life. And I could see from what they said to me that that is indeed, through the hard work of the Hizmet people and through the grace of God, what they were receiving. I hope these remarks have given you some insight into this movement, which animates the Atlantic Institute, which has in some ways contributed to this emerging great partnership between institutes like the Atlantic Institute, movements like the Hizmet movement, and a storied and noble and esteemed institution like Morehouse College, and what it represents as the yeast producer of the loaf of American civic life. Thank you very much for your attention, and God bless you all.
Dr. Timothy Sams, my boss, Vice President of Student Development, I'd like you to escort Ambassador Chowdhury to the first canvas. The first one. Over here. Over there. Alexander Daniel Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton, would you escort Dr. Alp Assalan Dogan to this canvas? Mustafa, I'd like you to join them. And both of you. Ian McElraith. Ian McElraith, where are you? You may join Ambassador Chowdhury. Louis Nevis, you may come up and join them. And Dr. Gregory Hall, would you escort Dr. Warren Stewart to this canvas? Mrs. Stewart, you may come up. Mr. and Mrs. Urquhart, you may come up. And Reverend Allen. To the other side. No. Okay. And the Reverend Kevin Ross. Would you escort Dr. Joseph Hill? Reverend Terry Walker. Quentin. I need you to give them a little more space for Reverend Hill. A little more space for Reverend Hill. Nope, not that one. Let's see. Maybe you have to move this one over first. Have I overlooked someone, Reverend Hill? Just call them up.
Dr. David E. Montgomery, and Reverend Charles Taylor, and Reverend Eric Donaldson.
Okay. And have I overlooked anyone you want to bring up? Oh, boy. Because this is the last thing on our program before the postlude, we're going to do something we usually do not do, because we're in a different era, and I'm going to let all of you who have cell phones come up to stand before the stage if you would like, so that you can get your pictures. Yeah. You just stand on the floor here across the front. What do you want me to say?
I'll come up.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to do is different. I'm going to do them all at the same time. This is what the big council decided. Okay. Is there anyone else, Alp or Mustafa, that you want to invite up? Speak up quickly. Okay. And Ian, is there anyone else you want to invite up representing the Soka Gakkai? Very well. I think we're ready. May I have your attention? Let the house fall silent so that you may hear every word. On Royal K. Chowdhury, your nonviolent demeanor and belief that peace is a human right has captured the attention, respect, and admiration of the World Parliament of the People, moral cosmopolitans, and heads of state globally. You have made an irrevocable covenant with the diversity of humanity, encouraging participation in creating the conditions for a culture of peace and gender equality. As an architect of the new civilization, you have pledged your commitment to the moral, economic, and environmental improvement of the species. And your personal identity has become inextricably linked with the concerns and lives of others. Therefore, we are pleased to announce that you are a world leader reflecting divinity and sainthood. Fethullah Gulen, a Turkish preacher, Sunni Muslim, faithful servant scholar, world teacher, author, poet, opinion drum major, and educational activist. Your interfaith and cross-cultural dialogue about science, democracy, and spirituality, and your opposition to violence and the misuses of religion as political ideology have made you the humanizing face of Islam. You are one of the world's 100 most important Muslim leaders for peace, a modern-day Rumi, with millions of international citizens following your guidance of love, compassion, open-heartedness, and service. Because the Gulen movement has become the modern-day version of Islam, with private schools and universities in 140 countries, we honor you today as a Prince of Peace. Warren Hampton Stewart Sr., hailed as a living legend, you are one of the 10 individuals with the most notable impact on the state of Arizona. You have preached in 38 states and 48 countries and built a new church edifice and family life center by raising $9 million. The story of your tireless 6 years of grassroots coalition building statewide and your dedication to securing the passage of Proposition 300 enabled Arizona to become the 50th state to observe the Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday by a landslide popular vote. This inspiring and unprecedented achievement causes us to declare that you are indeed a game changer and bridge builder, fit to lead efforts to reconcile differences in the name of justice and harmony. Joseph Hill, you are founder of a New Thought Ancient Wisdom Church in Chicago, where you lead people by your learned example, having earned 6 degrees, a bachelor's, 3 masters, and 2 doctorates. Over the past 18 years, 35 members of your congregation have returned to school to earn bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees, and 75 have received their GED certification and are pursuing college degrees. Your ministry has generated $350,000 in scholarships for Chicago public school students to attend college, established affordable housing for seniors and families, created a health initiative to address infant mortality and morbidity, and started an adult literacy class for native English speakers and those learning English as a second language. Yours is a full guidance ministry in the tradition of serving the least of these, making you pastor extraordinaire for the 21st century. You may unveil the canvases and let the trumpet sound. Is the artist in the house? Alvin Dwayne Mitchell. Okay. Dr. Oliver, while we're standing right where we are. Oh, yes. So should they be seated?
No, stay standing.
Okay, it's not long. No. Okay. May you remain right where you are, standing.
We celebrate the legacies of peace purveyors over the generations. We remember the struggles of mind, body, and spirit that led to a transcendent understanding that a just and peaceful world community is attainable as we struggle together. We are learning that peace is the guiding principle for all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions. Peace is not merely the absence of violence, but also the pursuit of justice using nonviolent means.
We are rising to attain peace and social cohesion through affirming the sanctity of every single human being. We will treat every human being with respect. We will affirm and uphold their right to be treated with justice and equity.
We are recognizing that to attain peace and social cohesion, we shall affirm the individual right of every person to live a life that is consistent with their values and beliefs, without any coercion from any government, group, or other individuals, as long as their actions do not transgress the freedoms of others.
We are striving to attain peace and social cohesion. We shall refrain from provoking conflict by displaying chauvinism or espousing superiority of one religion over the other.
We are advocating for the attainment of peace and social cohesion. We will not deny our humanity or the humanity of even our enemies and adversaries. We will uphold the human dignity that all are due.
We are committing to encourage the urgency of dialogue and respectful debate, to explore shared values across political, religious, social, and economic boundaries.
We therefore call upon all women and men to inculcate the values of peace and justice by rejecting ideologies and interpretations of sacred texts that foster violence or promote chauvinism, prejudice, and dogmatism. By affirming that peace cannot be attained until each one of us follows the golden rule. Do not unto others as you would have them do unto you. Let us go and be peace in the world and for the world. This is our call to peace.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, just before we get out of here, I want you to turn your attention to page 25 of your souvenir journal. We at the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel are about exporting what you see here unto the world and teaching other individuals how to do that. As a consequence, we have been granted an amazing grant from the Lilly Foundation to establish our 2015, our first class of the Martin Luther King Jr. College of Pastoral Leadership. The College of Pastoral Leadership is the chapel's newest program intended to advance our mission to develop ambassadors for peace for the beloved world community. I would like for you to join us in welcoming, and I will announce them one by one. They will probably have another appearance at next year's College of Ministers in Laity after they have completed their first year. And they are, and I call them out, Reverend Sherrod Creasman, the pastor of Columbia Drive United Methodist Church, Reverend soon-to-be Dr. Brandon Crowley, who is the pastor of Myrtle Baptist Church in West Newton, Massachusetts, Reverend Gregory Edwards, the senior pastor of the Resurrected Life Community Church in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Reverend Charles Fisher III, rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Atlanta, Georgia, Reverend Terry Ladd, pastor of First Baptist Church, East 8th Street, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Reverend Yvette Massey, pastor of Central United Methodist Church here in Atlanta, Georgia, the Reverend Dr. Darrell D. Roberts, pastor of Mount Welcome Baptist Church, Atlanta, Georgia, and I believe Dr. Roberts is here tonight. Please raise your hand. The Reverend Craig T. Robinson, pastor of Bethel AME Church, Bayshore, New York. And they will join our inaugural class this year. And I would just like for you to understand that what we do here is not just museum work. We are actually into putting the ideas of these great individuals on the portraits you see here and in the Walk of Fame into action. Thank you kindly, and we thank you for coming out this evening.